Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk a little bit more about day 10 yesterday in the New York v. Trump case, where the prosecution has just called Hope Hicks, who could be an exceedingly important witness. And I'll be back later to talk about her testimony, which I expect will not finish today and will extend into next week. But so Keith Davidson, there's been a kind of division of opinion about the effectiveness or not of his cross-examination by Emile Beauvais, the Trump lawyer. And let me just say in general, I have found their cross-examinations to be technically sound, but yet not so effective. And it's the general problem that they're presented with of needing some kind of thrust, theory, counter narrative, and choosing instead to have a sort of scattershot attack of any sort against every substantive witness. Actually, not just substantive. They even chose this morning to try to cross the custodian of, a lower level employee in the Manhattan DA's office who was forced to say, yes, these are authentic tapes that we harvested, et cetera. And they wanted somehow to try to suggest there were lies there, query whether the jury starts to sort of charge them, as it were, or blame them for those sorts of delays and kind of really, trivial arguments that are taking up a lot of time. But back to Davidson, there was some people who thought it was a pretty effective cross. I thought, again, they're basically going in on every witness to say, they lie, they have bad dental hygiene, they stole their library books, they beat their cat, it's sort of anything and everything. And what they really need is a tailored kind of credible cross-examination that makes a couple points, which points fit into an overall narrative that provides a reasonable doubt as to Trump's guilt. So Davidson definitely was more buttoned down and lawyerly, you could say, on cross-examination. And he seemed a kind of reluctant, recalcitrant witness, maybe even that he was being, cautious and hiding things, or maybe he was just being lawyerly, but definitely they tried to, dirty him up however they could, basically suggesting he makes his living, in a swamp that is just this side of extortion, taking explosive revelations from celebrities, and not just Stormy and McDougal, but we got into Hulk Hogan and others of his, famous but maybe not so reputable client base. And they, just generally wanted to undermine credibility, but exactly why and what parts were unclear. So, that I think explains the division of opinion. Some people saw him being a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit less forthcoming. Other people saw no real penetration in his essential story. Except, first, the main point that really didn't come through very well, and should have, arguably, this should have been the whole cross-examination. 2 points. One, he never talked to Trump himself. He doesn't know anything about Trump personally. And two, the guy he did talk to continually, Michael Cohen, he doesn't trust himself and thinks there were different kind of colorful epithets he employed. So that theme, as opposed to his general lack of, reputability as a lawyer, should have been front and center. They did do one thing that I've been thinking about, and I think it's always useful in cross-examinations of important witnesses to try to think, what argument are they setting up to make? What point? On closing argument, it's especially true for the defense, because I continue to hold to the, Littman axiom number one, until disproven, till we find out the world really is flat, that Trump won't testify, meaning, among other things, so much of their case has to come in through the cross-examination of the witnesses. Anyway, just two things to highlight about Davidson's testimony. Maybe three. The first is that the cross or the recross ended with a point that was, glaringly obvious, but they hadn't made before. Presumably they were saving it, which is the document of the actual contract, not the side contract that named Trump, but the one where they use pseudonyms, is not signed by Trump. Everyone else has signed it, and we're told that Cohen did sign the legally operative one for Trump, but it's not signed by Trump. They ended on that point. Second, snippet of a conversation between Davidson and Cohen that we hadn't heard before, which went as follows. Cohen says to Davidson, "I can't even tell you how many times he said to me, 'I hate the fact that we did it,'" meaning paid off Stormy Daniels. And my comment to him was, "But every person that you've spoken to told you it was the right move." Now, obviously, that doesn't exculpate Trump. We know that he did it, but it does sort of lay the groundwork for saying some kind of, half fact, half law defense of he is more of a passive actor who is taking the advice of people around him rather than the mover and the shaker and the, impresario. So, it's setting up along with things not being signed. And then also Cohen takes a while to make things happen. They go over much of the testimony, had to do with, his going over the deadline. So that piece, the new tape, that we've just heard, maybe ground a kind of argument that is, in combined with other things, something to give him a pass. I'm trying to sort of give the defense the benefit of the doubt and make their point for them. That is, conceive what within their scattershot cross-examination is to be found, the nuggets from which you could make an argument that goes to reasonable doubt. So here we have, we also, as everyone had heard before, had the pretty strong counter evidence where Cohen says straight out to Trump that they've got to do this, and Trump says, what's it going to cost? 150, et cetera. There are things on the other side. But basically, as I try to square the conflicting lines of reaction among sophisticated observers, some who think Davidson cross was effective, some who don't, I see this scattershot problem, which I think confuses, if you think it was effective, dirtying up Davidson with helping Trump. But possibly, especially in this, and then the other point I wanted to raise was Davidson's, they made a lot of Davidson's discussion of we lose leverage after the election. And what's that mean? That means everyone expects Trump to lose. He won't care anymore about the Stormy Daniels allegations, which after all had not impressed anyone before the Access Hollywood date came out. So on the one hand, and I've seen both these points made, it seems to reinforce why he's doing it. But on the other, it helps portray Davidson and Cohen as being together in a plot to kind of exploit Trump, if not pull the wool over his eyes. I think that's too much to say. But I think if you take the best nuggets of their cross, which should have been much, much shorter and pared down, you would start with, you didn't talk to Trump and you don't trust Cohen. But then there is enough that they can kind of massage out a narrative where Trump is an actor there, but not, deeply involved in the details and sort of being pushed along the tide by, say, Cohen and Davidson or Dylan Howard. Another question from a previous witness put me in mind of this, where they suggested that Trump is a multitasker who will sign checks while doing other things. And I think there will be testimony about his signing these checks to Cohen. Possibly it'll even come from Hope Hicks, which brings me back to where I started. That's a really important, dramatic witness on the stand. They're going to choose to end the week with her, which is something really strategic decisions about. And we'll see where things stand after her. But that's my overall assessment of Davidson's cross and my overall kind of rationalization of why smart people seem to be of differing views about its effectiveness. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.